Hello, Dragonfly Swarm. Hello, Noelle community. Noelle is a 4-star character that anyone who's played Genshin for more than 5 minutes has most likely obtained, and there's actually a really good reason why Hoyoverse chose Noelle to be one of the most easily obtainable 4-stars in the game. She's a Geo Claymore user who's able to serve multiple roles, her most notable of which being a fully self-sufficient main DPS. With her ability to massively increase her damage output during her burst, as well as her innate ability to shield and heal herself inside of her elemental skill Shield, Noelle is an amazing all-rounder that I personally think everyone should build and play for at least a little while, and no, I'm not just saying that because the Noelle community is holding me hostage. In today's video, I'm gonna discuss Noelle's kit in detail, including the intricate details of her abilities, and I'm also gonna go over her best artifacts, weapons, teams, and what builds work for what playstyle you're gonna go for. So buckle up, because we are going to become maids for the maid. To start this off by analyzing her kit, Noelle's attack talent is a relatively slow but hard-hitting 4-strike combo, and because it's so slow, when using her normal attacks, it's actually best to perform 3 hits and then reset the combo rather than allowing the 4th hit, because it saves time and increases overall DPS. As for Noelle's charge attacks, well, she spins. And with C2 Noelle, those spins do a considerable amount of damage, so from C2 onward, you can get away with zoning out and charge attack spinning with her during her burst, but I'll discuss that in more detail later. Noelle's elemental skill summons a shield onto the active character, dealing a burst of Geo damage upon casting, and the shield itself gains damage absorption based on Noelle's defense. A really cool aspect of her shield, however, is that while active, it causes Noelle's normal and charge attacks to have a chance to heal her entire party for a certain amount based on her defense. Additionally, with her 4th Ascension passive, Noelle will actually reduce the cooldown of this ability by 1 second for every 4 successful strikes she lands on opponents with her normal or charged attacks, so the hefty 24-second cooldown becomes much more digestible with her rotations, to the point where the shield itself can sometimes maintain 100% uptime. This elemental skill plays a very important role for Noelle herself, and it's important to note that the shield is technically designed for her rather than her team, but her team can benefit from and be protected by the shield. Noelle's elemental burst turns her into a big ol' broom that sweeps things. Upon casting her burst, Noelle emits a small blast of Geo damage around her and infuses her attacks with Geo damage that cannot be overridden by other elements, gaining a massively increased attack radius in the process. The most important thing to note about this ability, however, is that it also increases Noelle's total attack based on a large chunk of her defense. This allows her entire kit to benefit from a considerable damage buff and will allow her to take on a 15-second hyper carry role. Keep in mind that unlike the vast majority of other infusion abilities in the game, the effects of Noelle's burst will actually persist even if you swap her off the field momentarily and swap her back. The only other talent we've yet to talk about is Noelle's 1st Ascension passive, which grants some neat survivability for your team. Whenever Noelle is in the party but not on the field, your active character will gain a hefty shield based on 400% of Noelle's defense when their health drops below 30%. This ability can only occur once every 60 seconds, and depending on your personal skill level, it won't be an ability that's triggered often, but it's nice in a pinch and feels somewhat like a Barber res, only no one died. Yet. As for what Noelle's talent priority should be, you should focus on leveling up her burst and her attack talent simultaneously, and then her elemental skill. The burst and attacks are vital to her damage output, while the skill can get away with remaining at a lower level because of its nicely packed utility and decent low-level scaling. Before we move on, I want to mention something really important regarding Noelle's burst. When Noelle casts her burst, it will only translate the total defense that she had upon casting into attack. This means that if you use her burst and then build Husk stacks or place Goro's buff down, her burst won't grant a further defense to attack translation. So always stack as much defense bonus as you can before casting her burst, no matter what teams or builds you're using. The next thing I want to go over regarding Noelle is her constellations, and it's actually a pretty interesting thing to look at because Noelle's constellations elevate her from a reliable all-rounder DPS into a formidable and competitive carry unit able to output massive damage and make the most of her added utility as well. Not to mention, as a 4-star, her constellations are way more realistic to go for than that of a 5-star's constellations. We both know neither of us are that lucky. At C1, Noelle's chance of healing her entire party when she lands attacks is increased to 100% while under the effects of both her burst and her skill simultaneously. This, while arguably the most tame constellation, is still a really nice boost to her utility and allows your Noelle to reliably and consistently keep your team's health up at all times, which is very important in modern Genshin's late game environment because of corrosion, scary mechanics, and scary wizards. They're not actually wizards, but they do look like wizards. At C2, Noelle consumes 20% less stamina while performing her spinning charge attacks, and her charge attacks now benefit from 15% more damage. This constellation is simple but amazing for allowing Noelle to use her kit more effectively, and let me explain that. Noelle's charge attacks proc her ability to reset the cooldown of her skill much faster than her normal attacks can, and with situational investment and her C2, her charge attacks can rival the damage output of her N3 cancel combo, so it's a great constellation to add versatility to her playstyle. C3 grants 3 levels onto her skill, which is nice, but moving on. C4 causes an explosion every time Noelle's skill shield expires or is destroyed, and that explosion deals 400% of her attack as Geo damage. It's definitely not a reliable source of damage since you can't cause the explosion to happen very often, but it is a really nice nuke. C5 grants 3 levels onto Noelle's burst, which, considering the multiple scaling stats and their importance, makes C5 extremely valuable for damage boosting her kit by a noticeably larger amount during her burst. And finally, C6 is the game-changing constellation. At C6, Noelle's burst now converts an extra 50% of her defense into attack. Additionally, defeating an opponent now increases the duration of her burst by 1 second for up to 10 seconds total. This constellation essentially changes the entire way you need to focus your Noelle's stats, because suddenly she will benefit from much higher damage by fully investing in her defense stats rather than split investing into attack and defense. The simplified conclusion to that statement though is as follows. C6 gives Noelle the potential to become a very powerful DPS unit in your roster. My personal opinion on the value of these constellations overall is that they're pretty hit or miss, but the value that you get from Noelle's C2, C5, and C6 are especially amazing for her kit, so if you're close to any of those milestones, I give you the Gambler's Pass, if you want it of course. Moving onwards, Noelle's artifacts are actually pretty flexible. Unlike a lot of characters who have a very strict best in slot, Noelle can utilize multiple 4-piece sets quite well, and I'll be discussing the top 3 in this video, starting with the mathematical best in slot 4-piece Husk of Opulent Dreams. This set was released in 2.3 alongside Arataki Ito, and since its release has become the staple artifact set for characters that scale with defense, as it not only grants large defense bonuses but also Geo damage bonuses. The set itself has a conditional 4-piece passive that Noelle has no trouble capitalizing off of with the way her kit works, and the higher your investment on Noelle, the more, exponentially more, you will benefit from using this set over the other options. However, she does have 2 other very strong 4-piece sets, the easier of which to obtain being the 4-piece Gladiator set. This artifact set is easy to obtain and tolerable to min-max through boss farming and artifact recycling, and it works pretty well with Noelle's kit. The 2-piece attack bonus doesn't translate as well on Noelle as it does with other characters, but the 35% normal attack damage bonus does wonders for her N3 cancel combo. Just note that this 35% bonus does not apply to her charged attacks. The damage buff works so well because instead of boosting her attack stat, which is already generally low before burst translation and it cannot be modified by the burst bonus itself, the 35% bonus applies after factoring in all of the other buffs to her attack, making it a valuable damage bonus passive. Even so though, in my personal opinion, this feels like more of a temporary set to hold you over while you decide on her more defined artifact sets, one of which being the aforementioned Husk set, the other of which being the 4-piece Retracing Bolide. This artifact set grants Noelle a massive survivability boost with its sealed strength bonus, and it also grants a nearly unconditional 4-piece damage bonus, granting 40% increased normal and charged attack damage while protected by a shield. Using this set has the potential to output a considerably larger amount of DPS than Gladiators can, but I say it has the potential because there will inevitably be times where you don't have Noelle shielded, but those times are few and far between, making this set better overall than 4-piece Glads, but still not quite as offensive as 4-piece Husk. Husk is just magnificent. There's no bias, not in my guide videos. As for what stats you want to prioritize on your artifacts for Noelle, it's generally kind of simple. You want a crit rate or crit damage circlet depending on what your ratio needs more of, keeping in mind the 1:2 is the golden ratio. You'll also want a Geo damage goblet, but if you're having trouble finding a good one, or just one, your luck is shit. So use a defense goblet instead for now. It's not as good as a Geo goblet, but it will work until you find the Geo goblet of your dreams. As for Noelle's sands, it's actually kind of interesting because before C6, you can get away with either an attack sands or a defense sands and find similar results in damage output. However, if and when you get C6 Noelle, a defense sands will be the clear-cut superior option because of the massively increased defense to attack translation with her C6. As for the substats, prioritize crit stats and defense stats first, but also try and grab at least 30% energy recharge from your rolls because Noelle Noelle has pretty bad energy problems, and they're only really remedied by other Geo members in her party and a little bit of energy recharge. You can also take attack substats, and especially with C6, Noelle really doesn't need them. My personal recommendation and the build I'm using in this video is a 4-piece Husk of Opulent Dreams with a Geo Goblet, crit rate Circlet, and a defense Sands. And no, this is not just Ito's build copy-pasted onto Noelle. I don't know why you're making assumptions, leave me alone. Moving on to Noelle's weapons, she can make use of quite a handful of weapons, but definitely has clear best-in slots, so in order from top to bottom, we're gonna start at the Red Horn Stone Thresher. This weapon comes in as Noelle's overall best-in slot as it focuses heavily on granting a large crit damage bonus as well as increasing her defense and her normal and charged attack damage based on her defense. Especially with C6 Noelle, you don't need to worry about the rather low base attack on this 5-star claymore because she makes great use of the weapon's other attributes, and it allows her to dish out big PP damage. However, Noelle can also make pretty good use of the Unforged, and although I do recommend other weapons over this one at C6, it's still nice for its high base attack and multiple instances of attack boosting through its passive. Wolf's Gravestone is in a very similar spot as it is nice for its high base attack and attack boosting passive, but again, at C6, Noelle's attack stat is nearly irrelevant anyways, so the value of these two weapons are far overshadowed by other options, such as the completely free-to-play friendly White Blind Claymore. This Claymore grants a huge defense bonus and even more defense with its weapon passive, which Noelle can make very good use of, especially at C6, and the weapon itself is craftable, therefore easy and valuable to max refine. However, if you want to splurge a little on Noelle, by purchasing the Battle Pass you can unlock her mathematically strongest 4-star Claymore, the Serpent Spine. Not only does this Claymore make it way easier to balance Noelle's crit ratio, but it also grants a stacking damage bonus when she's on the field, which in some circumstances can outperform that of White Blind and even many of her 5-star Claymores. Noelle can use other Claymores such as Prototype Archaic, Skyward Pride, Favonius Greatsword, and all that, but honestly I don't see the point in using those if you can instead craft White Blind because it really is a great weapon that pretty much was designed for her. Moving on to Noelle's team building, I don't usually preface these, but I'm gonna preface this. Prefacing. Noelle pretty much requires the Geo Resonance passive because she literally grants herself a shield, so there's just no reason not to use it. With that in mind, there are virtually no circumstances in which you'll find value in pairing Noelle without at least one Geo unit. And with that said, I'd like to say that Noelle's staple Geo support in all of this team building section is Goro. With the right build, Goro not only provides a nice amount of Geo particles for Noelle, but he also grants flat defense bonuses to her, interruption resistance, and even Geo damage bonuses, all of which Noelle scales with impeccably. Just as Goro is a god duo of sorts with Ito, he's also a god duo with Noelle because of Noelle and Ito's near identical build necessities. With that said, all of my team recommendations in this video will include Goro, but you can substitute him with Ningguang for the Geo damage bonuses and general off-field damage, or Geo Traveler for really nice Geo particle generation, both of which are very valuable for Noelle. The first and most notorious team I want to suggest is the Mono Geo team, in which you stuff 4 Geo characters onto one team with the general goal of having them amplify one another's damage as well as circulate a lot of Geo particles around for fast rotations and high uptime. This team composition recently became popular due to Ito and Goro's release as well as the release of the Husk set, and it features, in this case, Noelle, Goro, Albedo, and Zhongli. But you can substitute Albedo and Zhongli for Ningguang and Geo Traveler, just keep an eye on Noelle's shield as it'll be her only way of tapping into Geo Resonance among other passives tied in with her shield. I should say that this, ironically, is the one team that you pretty much can't replace Goro in. Goro is the glue that makes Mono Geo so strong, and without him, you might as well just focus on building one of Noelle's other viable teams, such as Zaprox. This is a team in which you pair Noelle with, as you might expect, at least one other Geo character for Geo Resonance, and then Fischl. Fischl has a pretty neat passive in which anytime your active character triggers an electro-related reaction while Oz is on the field, he'll strike the afflicted enemy for damage equal to 80% of Fischl's attack. And since Electro Crystallize is so easy to proc with Noelle and Fischl together, this passive triggers quite often, allowing you to take advantage of heavy off-field electro damage whilst also dishing out heavy Geo damage from Noelle herself. It's also worth noting that you can flex the Mono Geo comp into a triple Geo comp with Bennett, because Bennett will grant a pretty big damage boost for Noelle to take advantage of while still utilizing Geo Resonance and Goro's triple Geo buff. The only drawback to this team comp being that Bennett has a hard time supplying himself with enough energy to keep up with the rotations of this team, unless you invest quite modestly into his energy recharge. But that about sums up the Noelle guide. I actually had a lot of fun building and playing her these past few weeks, and honestly I was only gonna do it to make a guide, but she's surprisingly fun and strong. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, that really helps my channel out, and also you should totally join my Discord server because I would love to see you around and say hello to you. Alright, I'm gonna go try to break out of this dungeon now. The Noelle community has gone too far holding me here and making me read this script to promote Noelle propaganda. My god, it's like a cult.